There are times when existence presents signals that demand your attention, small occurrences that appear as random alignments, emerging even without your deliberate search. A different quality to silence arrives through messages that nearly materialized but remained undelivered. A presence manifests precisely when you choose to progress forward. Within every process exists a highly particular instant of profound connection, where nothing appears altered on the surface. Nevertheless, everything has transformed internally. You have likely experienced unease across several days, or perhaps multiple weeks, an unease that differs from fear, presenting instead as peculiar certainty, as though the density of atmosphere surrounding you has shifted, as though memories, sensations, or the unexpected presence of someone physically absent suddenly reaches you. I want you to take this instant to breathe deeply and hear what your heart has been communicating across extended time, regardless of your mind attempting to silence it, because what you will now hear represents neither fantasy nor pleasant coincidence. What you perceive holds reality. This subtle pressure within your chest, this altered vibration, stems neither from imagination nor desperate wishes for different circumstances. This confirms that the invisible thread between two consciousnesses has tightened. Today I want to speak with you regarding a person who, despite attempts to contain it, experiences what can no longer remain hidden even from themselves: genuine fear of losing you. This differs from the neurotic fear of an ego desiring possession. This represents something far deeper and more primal. When someone carrying your energy within their soul senses they are truly losing you, something awakens inside them. This awakening arrives suddenly, uncomfortably, and unwelcomely. Throughout an extended period, this person may have moved through life with arrogant confidence that you would always remain nearby, available, waiting, holding the burning candle while they decided whether approaching closer felt safe. But energetic dynamics remain non-static. The instant you transform, the instant your energy ceases waiting, you transmit a shockwave through the connection that has reached the center of their reality. Regardless of how much this person attempted concealment, how much pride they constructed, or how many rational justifications they created to avoid feelings. Along this path exists an instant when the soul stops listening to the mind. During this instant, the soul hears the emptiness, hears the absence, and confronts the real, tangible, and frightening possibility that you will no longer exist in their future. And this precisely describes what occurs now. While you hear this, you need neither a missed call nor a lengthy message to know this truth. You know this because soul connections respond not to calendars or logic, but to vibration. And when another person's soul senses they are about to lose their energetic home, it begins to move. What you discover today will help you understand why this shift happens right now, and why it touches you so deeply. We often believe that silence signifies the end, that distance equals forgetting. But in the energetic realm, silence frequently represents the very space where the loudest transformations occur. The person who may have seemed cold, distant, or confused now enters a phase where awareness becomes inevitable. Ordinary distractions no longer function. Ignoring their own feelings no longer works. Something pushes them toward unexpected movement. A reaction that originates not from conscious will, but from vital necessity to restore balance that you altered through your withdrawal. But to understand why this fear of losing you proves so powerful, and why it will provoke something unexpected, we must first understand what you have done. Perhaps without realizing it, this has permanently changed the game rules. If you sense this shift, write the word change in the comments. You are transforming as well, and this forms an integral part of everything. Throughout a long period, your energy was probably directed outward, always in constant motion toward this person. This was energy of waiting, doubts, persistent questions. Perhaps you spent nights wondering whether they feel it, whether they remember you, whether your presence matters. This vibration, born from love, often was perceived from the other side as a demand, as subtle pressure which paradoxically gave the other person enough security to not move. While you maintained the connection alone, the other person needed to hold nothing, but something happened. Perhaps you, without consciously desiring to learn choosing yourself more, you began withdrawing your energy, not as punishment for the other, but as an act of self-love. And the instant you return to yourself, the vibration changes radically. This phenomenon is known as the physics of void in spiritual relationships. Nature, the universe, and the human soul despise emptiness. When you stop chasing and no longer vibrate from need, an empty space forms in the dynamic. Previously, this space was filled with your insistence, your availability, your constant attention. Now there exists silence. But this represents no meaningless silence. This is internal absence. I want you to truly grasp the difference, because this matters. Physical absence means you do not see each other. Internal absence emerges when you no longer depend on their validation. This is the instant when you release mentally and emotionally and concentrate on your center. This is precisely what now strikes the other person. Because before, you gave them solid assurance of your availability. Imagine two people holding a stretched rope. If you always pull, the other must only resist or drift, but need not apply any effort to hold it. The instant you release the rope to care for your hands, the other person loses balance. They stumble, feel the missing support. And this missing support becomes a mirror of their own truth. Without your constant energy that fed their ego or sense of security, this person is forced to generate their own energy, to face their own solitude, and ask themselves why the world suddenly becomes cold. They sense that your energy has realigned, that your heart no longer gives itself away as before, and this shakes more than any physical distance. Emotional absence proves far more powerful than verbal absence. A person can grow accustomed to you not writing, can adapt to pauses, but not to no longer occupying the same special place in your inner world. At this instant, the law of equilibrium takes effect. By withdrawing your attention, you cease applying pressure, and when you stop applying pressure, the other stops running. They have nothing to defend against, and when the defensive wall falls, they confront their feelings, as though life declares, quote, zero. But this movement arises from discomfort. The void you left behind demands filling, and since you are no longer prepared to fill it with breadcrumbs or one-sided efforts, filling it remains for only one person, them. This is why you sense this unease now. This is why you feel their energy seeking you. Even if they say nothing internally, they are not calm. They examine things previously ignored. Think about what once seemed granted. Your energetic departure has not severed the connection. On the contrary, it has cleansed it of noise and left this person alone with the truth they long avoided. And this truth, when met in silence, acts as a merciless mirror that shows not only you, but also those parts of themselves they hid in darkness. To truly comprehend why this person reacts now and not earlier, we must address what depth psychology, inspired by Carl Jung, calls the shadow and the mirror. Every person carries within themselves a shadow, an invisible bag into which we place everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves. Here is where our fears end, our insecurities, and also our capacity to love unconditionally. If they were hurt in the past, when this person withdrew, made excuses, or behaved coldly, they were actually reacting not to you, but to their own shadow. The fear of losing you now manifests to reveal something that always existed, but remained hidden behind old wounds and defense mechanisms. While you were present and chasing them, you acted as a container for their projections. If fear of closeness existed, they could convince themselves that you were too intense, or that the timing was wrong. Their logical mind used your presence to justify their fears. But now that you have detached, you remove the canvas onto which they projected their film. Now they sit alone in the cinema. The film continues playing, but now they understand that the protagonist and antagonist are the same person. They are forced to confront particles of themselves they never wanted to face. And this process intensifies. Even the dream world becomes a meeting place. During the day, this person's ego struggles to maintain control, build walls, and rationalize distance. But in dreams, the ego shuts off, and the soul becomes free. Very often at this stage, you begin seeing dreams about them with extraordinary vividness, dreams that seem more real than reality itself. In these nocturnal encounters, communication often proves clear and fluid. There are embraces, apologies, and unmistakable messages. These are not merely wishes of your mind. These are genuine meetings on the astral level, where both are already negotiating the energy of reunion before it manifests in physical life. As though your souls coordinate while your human personalities still work on aligning themselves. If this happens to you too, write dreams in the comments. We are deeply connected to an invisible yet tangible reality. All these signals, both internal and external, have only one purpose: to prepare you. They do not torment you with memory of someone absent, but make you aware that accumulated energy reaches a critical point. The pressure in the system of communicating vessels connecting you approaches its maximum. The resistance this person maintains so long crumbles under the force of their own feelings and the undeniable truth of the connection. But, and this proves very important, so you do not lose courage at the end, before this dam breaks and water can flow toward you, you will likely notice one final confusing phenomenon. Just before dawn, the night proves darkest, and just before a person surrenders to love, the ego wages its final, most fierce, and most deceptive battle. It is important to speak about the phase that often proves the most confusing and painful on the entire path. The instant when most people lose faith and walk away. When exactly should the miracle occur? It is quite possible that, despite all internal signs and synchronicity, external reality suddenly shows the opposite of what your intuition clearly tells you. You may notice this person distancing even further, suddenly becoming colder, more dismissive, or harder. Perhaps they block communication channels, seem overly happy in public, or adopt a radical posture of indifference, as though you no longer exist for them. Such behavior in no way signifies they have forgotten you. On the contrary, this is what we call the peak of ego resistance, the final confirmation that their internal structure is collapsing. To understand this, we must consider the nature of psychological resistance. Imagine a rubber band stretching. For it to snap forward with force, it must first be pulled back to the maximum in the opposite direction. The farther it pulls back, the stronger and faster its return to center. What you currently observe is this final tension. This person's ego, the part of mind created to protect them from pain and vulnerability, senses a mortal threat. It recognizes it is losing the battle with its feelings. The love they experience for you and the fear of losing you have become so powerful they are destroying their illusion of control. Faced with this impending surrender, the ego reacts with defensive violence. This is the tense calm before the storm, or rather, the final roar of the beast before it becomes tamed. This person fights not against you, but against themselves. Their extreme coldness represents a desperate defense mechanism. They attempt to convince themselves, and simultaneously you, that they do not need you. Because admitting they need you would mean destroying all justifications they use to keep distance. This would mean admitting they were wrong, that they were afraid, and that they are not as strong and independent as they pretended. This peak of resistance is your test. This is the instant when life asks you, do you trust more what your physical eyes see or what your heart feels? If you react desperately to this coldness, chase them again, or demand answers, you release pressure from the system and allow them to return to their comfort zone. But if you remain in the center, if you understand that this sharp retreat is merely a prelude to the collapse of their defenses, then you allow the pressure to do its work. This phase proves paradoxical and deceptive. The louder the external silence, the louder the internal scream. This person lives in unbearable contradiction. Every cell of their body cries out for you, while their rigid mind orders them to stay away. This is a state of internal civil war. The indifference they show externally requires enormous energy to maintain. Pretending you mean nothing to them, while their soul screams the opposite, proves exhausting. And like any effort that contradicts nature and truth, this too has a very short lifespan. No one can wear such a mask long without destroying it. Connection energy resembles water behind a dam. You can build higher walls. You can reinforce concrete with pride and stubbornness. But if the river continues swelling, fed by sincere love and the void you left behind, inevitably arrives an instant when the structure gives way. And when that instant arrives, it happens not quietly. This is not a soft slide back to you, but an internal upheaval that forces them to no longer deny their own truth. The person who acted for so long with masks, excuses, and distance suddenly becomes overwhelmed by a force greater than their resistance. At this instant, they understand that the price of control proved too high, that they lost more than they ever wanted to admit. And it is then, when the pressure inside becomes unbearable, the wall breaks. Not because they decided, but because their soul gives them no other choice. Now follows the unexpected movement you intuitively sensed from the beginning of this path. A step, a sign, a message, a glance, an action that proves clearer and truer than anything they showed before. Not from need, but from awareness that they can no longer ignore the connection. The truth has reached them, and this truth returns you to them not with uncertainty, but with silence, knowing you are the place where their soul can breathe again. If you accept this message, write ACCEPT in the comments.